Good morning, students. Today we'll be doing material handling from operations management. Now, materials as such we know is a very core component of any organization. If you look at any organization that is involved in manufacturing and other things, materials are very core component. Now, to handle these materials requires a certain set of expertise, and we are going to do that and learn that itself right now. Now, what will happen is in material handling is you always have a certain amount of things that will happen during material handling. For example, when materials are procured inside the organization, they move within the organization in terms of becoming from raw materials to finished goods, and then they become finished goods, and then they are sent outside the organization. So there's a whole process that goes on. Now, during all of these process, materials have to be handled in a certain way, and that is what we'll be learning here. So in this specific thing, we'll be starting off with movement of materials, protection, storage, and control of materials in this case. Now, what are the basic objectives? As an operations management and in any other material inventory management system, what you look at is there are certain different types of objectives. Now, these objectives are minimization of processing time, minimization of material handling costs, preventing damages to goods and materials, preventing accidents, minimization of fatigue and drudgery, improved productivity, elevated plant efficiency, greater utilization of materials handling equipment, and better housekeeping. Now, all of these things are basically required. If you look at any system, it is required to improve the efficiency and reduce the amount of wastage that happens in any process. So similarly, material handling, if you look at all of these different objectives, what you'll understand is this is mainly focused on reducing of wastage and to ensure that these materials are there where they are required at the right time at the minimum amount of cost. Now, there are other things also, like you might also focus on efficient storekeeping, lower investment in work in progress, and better plant layout. We've discussed plant layout before. Plant layout means how materials and equipments are put in a space that we have for manufacturing. That is how we arrange things. So when you have a good material handling system, it should ensure that you have it should be there in a good plant layout. Otherwise, what will happen is it will create some type of bottlenecks, as we've seen before. Now, there are certain principles of material handling. Now, these principles they are divided into planning principles and operating principles, principle of flow, and equipment principles. Now, if you look at this one, you start off with your planning principle. The planning principle is, first one is principle of plant layout. That is, the layout should be arranged in such a way that the movement of materials should have minimum hindrances. And that is how you should arrange any layout in a plant. Because otherwise, what will happen is if the layout is not proper, you will have hindrances, obstacles, or so-called bottlenecks, as you call it, in any business organization. And this will create delays and obstructions in the whole process. Then you have principle of delegation of responsibility. Delegation, we've already learned before, that delegation means you have to ensure that in any material handling process, everything should not be centralized. You should have systems in place to ensure that other people also get involved, and you have a decentralized system of working. Then you have principle of minimization of rehandling. Rehandling means handling the material again and again. Now, this involves a lot of extra cost. So you should have systems in place that ensure that rehandling is reduced to a minimal extent. Then you have principle of space saving. Space saving is something that is very important now. It is because the lack of space in every manufacturing concern is becoming a problem. Whenever you're expanding, maybe there is lack of space, or whatever space you have to ensure that it is utilized to the maximum. So you should design your processes or material handling processes so that it requires the minimum amount of space that it should. Okay. Then you have your operating principle. Now, principle of unit load handling. First one, principle of unit load handling means that whenever you're looking at different loads that you're going to pick up and drop at some other place, you should ensure that happens always at a minimum cost, because otherwise what will happen is you will have a lot of different costs associated with it, which will increase the total cost. Then you have principle of gravity. Principle of gravity means, we all know what gravity is. Gravity means that is a natural phenomenon that we have already described before in different sciences and learned also that. Now, whenever you have to handle materials, you should ensure that you use the benefit of gravity. For example, if you have to get a material from 10th floor to the first floor, you should ensure that this goes through a chute or something that utilizes gravity. So the cost of mechanization and the cost of running those machines will also come down. Then you have principle of flow of materials. Flow of materials means how materials go from one place to another. You should ensure that flow is as smooth as possible. Then you have equipment principles. That is principle of mechanization. Mechanization means that is you have to ensure that every process that can be mechanized should be mechanized. It is because when people are involved, there are chances of human error. So if you have a machine in place which can do the same repetitive process in the most accurate manner, please ensure that you have a good mechanized system in place. Then you have principle of terminal time. Whenever you look at different material handling process, movement is an important component. So what happens is whenever you have to take a product from one place to another, what will happen is there is a waiting time at each end. So you have to ensure that the waiting time is minimal. That is principle of terminal time. Then you have principle of dead weight. Whenever you have equipment that is used to move other materials around, you should ensure that the weight of equipment is at the minimum. Otherwise, the force required to push that entire thing would be too high. Then you have principle of standardization. As long as possible and as far as possible, we should ensure that there should be standardization in materials, because and equipment also, because otherwise what will happen is you will have tons of different varieties of equipment and things lying around that people have to be trained on. If you have standardized equipment, standardized things to use, what you can easily do is to ensure that the people are easily trained and they can do things as fast as possible. Then you have principle of maintenance. In terms of equipment, it is very important to have well maintained machinery and other things, because more maintenance means smoother running, less maintenance means more obstacles or more breakdowns. Now this happens because as machines are not maintained, they'll be prone to breakdowns. So when breakdown happens, your production process stalls and you have other problems associated with it. Then you have principle of speed. Principle of speed means the more you try to, whenever you are using machines or equipment, the whole objective should be to increase the speed rather than to reduce it, because that is why you are having machines. Now if you are increasing the speed of movement of materials with machines, it is good, but if the entire process is slowed down, that means that there is some problem in how you have planned your mechanizations. Then principle of versatility. One equipment should be usable for many other things also, because you have one dead equipment used for maybe once in a month, it is basically a dead equipment. So you require different other equipments that can be used for different purposes. Only then the utilization from this equipment would be maximum. Then you have costing principles. So whenever you have, when you have to buy a product, or let's assume in this case an equipment, what you should understand is you should buy it as the minimal possible cost, because if you invest a lot in it, what will happen is you will end up having high overheads. Then you have principle of replacement. You should replace equipments and materials when they are required. Otherwise, what will happen is you will be stuck with obsolete materials which end up taking up more cost than is required. Then you have principle of handling cost appraisal. You should be able to break down the handling cost of equipment or the materials that you're taking from one place to another, because only then you'll realize where you're incurring higher cost and where you can reduce the amount of cost that is there. Then you have other general principles. As in any factory layout, you have your principle of safety. You should ensure that there is maximum amount of safety when people use these machines or move materials from one place to another. Principle of sound training. People should be trained properly to ensure that minimal accidents take place. Principle of identification. People should be able to easily identify materials, equipments, and things that are sorted somewhere else. So you should be sorting. Principle of location. People should be, whatever employees are handling employees, they should understand where a specific material is. For example, if you're looking at a small table here or a small TV here, it should be marked in such a way that anybody can trace it to where it is located. Okay. For example, if it is written St. Albert's TV1, that means St. Albert's TV1 is actually in the room that is, for example, in classroom 3. So it is easy to identify that. That is how it is done. Principle of material treatment. So whenever you have materials that have been treated over time, you have to understand that these things have to go through a process, otherwise you'll have some problems. Now, these are certain types of materials that we're showing here. One is your group 1, that is your hand barrow, which does not have wheels, as you can see here. And this is your 2-wheel barrow. So this is not very common, but you can see this is in some places it is used when it does not have wheels, but it has a 2-wheel barrow. Then you have your 2-wheel truck and your hand trolley. You have your sliding wheel truck, lift trucks, pallet trucks. Now these are your conveyors. In general conveyors, this is your normal belt conveyor in which you can put a product and it will come here. And this is your roller conveyor. This also happens in different things. So you can also have a roller conveyor also. Then you have a screw conveyor. For example, if you put certain things here, it will come from here and end up here. This is how. Then you have your monorail conveyor. It is like a train that is moving around. You can take those things from one place to another on this system. Then you have a vibrating conveyor. Whenever you have to segregate materials, like you have to remove dirt from, let's assume, from a diamond mine or something, you have to remove dirt from it. You start off with a vibrating conveyor. This conveyor actually vibrates. So whatever dirt is, it segregates and it falls somewhere else, and that is how it is designed. Then there are other groups in which you have hand operated trucks. You also have forklift trucks. You have hoists and cranes. You have ropeways, rams and chutes. Chutes is this in which you put product, as we discussed before in the principle of gravity. If you can use a chute wherever possible, you should use it, because the amount of investment in mechanization would be less. Then you have lifts, tractors and trailers. Now, in materials management, now this is a one step higher process in which you also have a process of planning and controlling material flows. Now in there you only had handling, now you have planning and controlling material flows. That is what happens in materials management. Now you group them in 5 different categories. You have either raw materials, consumable stores, components, maintenance materials and tools. Then you have direct and indirect materials. Now direct materials are used exactly like in the material. For example, if I'm looking at, I'm just having a pen here, for example. Now, if you look at this pen, there are many materials that are used directly in it. You might have ink in it directly, a plastic component, a small steel component. These are direct materials. You always have indirect materials also. For example, somebody might have used some materials to pack it, which is not actually a direct material in this product, but it is coming along with it. So that is an indirect material. Then you have the scope. Now, wherever it can be used, material management can be used in all of these different places: in purchasing, stock keeping, inventory control, issue of materials, material handling, disposal of scrap and surplus. In all of these different places, you can use materials management, I'm sorry. Then you have objectives of material management. Primary objective, as in any process: low purchase price, high inventory turnover, uninterrupted supply of materials, good quality material that is supplied, low payroll cost, because the more you spend on people delivering and handling materials, the more your payroll cost will be. So you will ensure that those systems have a lower payroll cost. Then you have personal development. People should understand how to use products. They should be more skilled in the whole process. So even if they go somewhere else, they can use those skills. And in your own company also, you will have highly skilled employees. Then you have material and cost control. Obviously, this is a major reason for any material management system. It ensures that you have low material and material and control cost. Then you have secondary objectives. Secondary objectives means you have whenever you have a very good system, robust system in place, it ensures that you have a very good relationship with your suppliers and customers. You also have system in which the production department can be assisted in terms of what kind of inventory you have and how you can supply it, when you can supply it, in what quantity you can supply it. All of these things can be explained with the help of a very good materials management system. Then it can also be used in make or buy decisions. Make or buy means whether you should make the product in-house or you should buy it from outside. Now, when you have a good materials management process in place, what it can do is it can help you evaluate those decisions better. For example, there might be cases where you cannot make it. You might have a requirement to make it, but you do not have the resources to make it. So you can tell the management, look, we do not have these resources, so we cannot make it. Then you have your standardization. It ensures that you have standardized products. We've seen this before. We've seen in principle of standardization, in which you have to ensure that everything is almost standardized so that it is easy to train, it is easy to use. Then you have, because of a good system that you have, the amount of conflict between departments would be reduced, thus resulting in interdepartmental harmony. Now, these are different functions of material management. You might have production and material control, that is one. Purchasing function, non-production stores, transportation, material handling, and receiving. So these are all the different functions that generally any material management system does. And these are other functional areas in which materials management can be interoperated with. Materials and profitability. The better material management system in place, the lower cost associated with it, the greater the profit. That is materials and profitability. Then you have material management and production management. Now, production department. Now, what happens is, whenever you have to produce something, you have to have some resources and inventory in place. Now, this is done by having a very good materials management system in place. If you have that, you can have easy production. You can have production without any obstacles or so-called bottlenecks. Then you have materials and finance department. You have to purchase this materials from somewhere, you have to make payments for it. So you require the finance department to be very updated with what is happening with your materials management system. Now, if your material management system is very good, your this finance process, your payment process goes on time, there are minimum hindrances in it, and you can have good relationship with your suppliers. Then your materials management and personnel department. For this, you require a lot of training and other things to be handled. So for that, you will have a good system there. Then relationship materials and marketing department. Marketing department means whenever you have a marketing department, the basic objective is to ensure that the products are somewhere else or they reach the desired consumer. So for that, what happens is only until you have a product in place or you have the required resources in place in terms of inventory and other things, you can ask the marketing department to go and do it, because otherwise what will happen is they'll go and market the product and you will have no product in the market, which will create a lack of goodwill. And this is it. This is with material handling. Thank you so much. Thank you.